Somebody told me recently that, you know, if people don't like you, that's okay, because that's a great filter. Those are people you don't need to worry about anymore, you know? It's like you can live without them. And it's like sometimes telling yourself that kind of thing
They
is
made the
really
decision for
helpful.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Today on Love's Music, we have Jon from The Family Grave, here to talk about his new album, Old Songs for Kids. He has singles AC/DC and Big Man, songs that really grabbed me the first time I heard them. He's here to talk about this project and many others that he has. If you like what you've heard so far, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, send me your feedback. So, up next, all the way from Brighton, we have Jon from The Family Grave. Well, you have such a wealth of music. I probably could have spent several months just going through your catalog. But it's also it's rich in storytelling. There's so much depth in your music. Despite some of the production being sparse, it still doesn't feel underproduced. It just feels like these very complete albums that are cohesive and they connect. And they connect on all different levels. Some are fun, some are heavy, some you need like a few minutes to sit with. How long did it take you to create such a rich catalog of music?
I started late. I was a late starter when it comes to writing songs and playing music. And about a long time ago, fair whack ago, really, I started out with this act called the Hiawatha Telephone Company, which was just a name I gave myself really as a vehicle to publicize my songs. And at that stage, I always thought I wrote songs mainly for myself, but I thought maybe somebody else would pick them up. Maybe I'd be a songwriter for other artists and so on. And the first album I recorded as Hiawatha Telephone Company is called Harry Smith Was My Father. And that basically came from, it just had this bundle of songs. And I thought, hold on, these are good. These have got something. And I wanted to, just maintain them, keep them for posterity. So I just found a friend who was running a studio in Brighton, and we went into the studio. It was like, bang, 5 hours, me and my guitar, about 15 songs, of which I think a dozen of them appear on the album. And that was it. And it was recorded literally like that in one go, 1 or 2 takes each. That's what's out there. That's the album. And then at that stage, I thought, well, in a few years' time, I have a busy job and I had kids who were still needing some support at that stage. So, every 5 years I thought was a reasonable time span for an album or what I thought of as a collection of songs. So first 2 Hiawatha Telephone Company albums were, I think they were 5 years apart. What changed was the pandemic. And, that just, it freed me up a bit. And, I know it was a horrific time for many people for many reasons. But for me, it meant my job changed. I was able to work more from home. I had a bit more time on my hands, a little more money because I wasn't spending money on commuting. That was a big cost at that time, which I invested in some studio work, which I'd never been able to do before. And so then suddenly, I had a bundle of albums that needed recording. Well, I had a vision for 3 albums, one of which I'd written, which is the Happy Songs album. That was already written, but I thought it was basically too good to record in the way that I'd recorded my albums previously, which was just me, my guitar, one mic or whatever.
And it
I was just hanging on to these songs. I hung on to them for years, not really knowing what to do with them. I was playing them live a bit and so on, but I didn't know. And then, as I say, I went into the studio and thought, well, I've got this album. Let's record it properly with some friends, get them involved, more of a band feel, more of a studio feel. And that was the first of what became the Happy Old Love Songs trilogy.
You have songs on that album that I believe could chart too. There's some really good songs on that Happy Songs album.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm very, very proud of it. I'll tell you about the Happy Old Love Songs trilogy because it had Happy Songs, which was the album I'd already written. And then I had a vision of a song about love, the album Songs About Love, which is Family Grave plays Songs About Love. I had this idea in my head for different kinds of love songs. And that album was a collection of not traditional love songs. It's like love for, yes, there's love for a partner, but there's bad relationships, there's love for your country, there's love for, becoming, for your past history, migrant history and things like that. Lots of different variants of love, essentially. But I had this vision, hadn't written any of those songs. And basically, I wrote all those songs in 1 month in February. I guess it was 2021. I think it was a year after the pandemic. So those got written in literally a very short period of time. And then I also had a bundle of old songs that I thought were really cool and I'd never got around to recording. And that became the Old Songs for Kids album. And there were some of the old songs on that, but there's also a few new ones in there as well. So it became this thing, this Happy Old Love Songs trilogy. I have this vision of it becoming a box set at some stage, put the 3 albums together. I haven't got around to that yet.
No. Well, they definitely connect. There is like a through line through all the songs, just similar tone, sound, mood, feel. I get a lot of, and I don't know if this is a fair comparison. You don't sound like these folks, but it kind of reminds me of, I hear hints of like Nick Cave, Elvis Costello. Are you familiar with My Morning Jacket? Jim James, how his voice has so much personality.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think some of my song, I think I heard a number of people who influenced my songwriting. I mean, I've actually done tribute nights to people like Tim Hardin and Townes Van Zandt, who are kind of more classical singer-songwriters. Yeah. But I definitely include, I mean, Lou Reed was one of my biggest influences. But then after that, obviously Dylan. And then Elvis Costello's up there because I kind of I feel I write two sorts of songs. There's a kind of very wordy, intellectual, story-based song, which I feel is me in my Dylan type phase. And then there's much more pointed, poppy, kind of indie pop, kind of punchy sort of things, which are there in the album as well. And that, for me, Elvis Costello is definitely a name that comes to mind there about, when I'm writing those sorts of songs.
The name Family Grave, right? That's basically, that's your moniker, and it's kind of like a revolving lineup of musicians, people that you know personally that you bring in for, I call them mercenary musicians, but if they're your personal friends,
Yeah,
they come in, they play parts for you.
It's fair enough. I mean, they're friends or friends of friends, and I kind of, it's a similar model to people like Bonnie Prince Billy, I guess, who has a similar thing, and he kind of quite often, some of his albums obviously are just him and a guitar doing his own thing, but then he often has groups of friends that he brings in. They're different friends each time, and that's, I like that approach, really. It kind of it's worked well for me, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you where you got the name from.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it was a photograph I took at a local graveyard, actually, and there's just loads of these family graves there. Big, the big graves where they kind of, I guess they pile the bodies, really. I don't really know how it works. This is a Victorian graveyard, which sounds a bit gruesome, but the way I always explain it is it just captured something for me, and it captured really the two things. One's family, which is about closeness, it's about love, it's about connection and relationships, which a lot of my songs are about. And the other thing is gravity, seriousness. And a lot of my songs have a kind of intellectual depth, the seriousness about them, which I think stands out a little bit as well in the way in which I write.
It's rare that you see, because now that I know it was such a condensed period of time, I mean, there's a lot of work. And if you're just getting started in the quarantine time, I mean, you're talking five, maybe 6 years tops. Tell me a little bit about your process. I mean, you're going in, you're banging out a song a day. You're starting with a concept, you're starting with a story. How are you able to take from blank canvas to completed painting so quickly?
It's hard. I have to treat it as a job of work, and I can't do that full time. So a lot of my albums, I mean, Everybody is Flawed is one, Happy Songs was another, were written 10 songs in a month. I actually joined, there's a website, I don't know if you've heard of it, February Album Writing Month. It's FAWM, FAWM.org. They're great. Every February, they basically get people together and say, look, it's February, it's a boring month, it's going to be raining all the time, you're going to be indoors, great time to write an album. And I kind of bought into that, and I've tried it a few years. Some years I end up writing nothing. And then there's been a few years where I've written like an album's worth of songs, or the best part of it, and then you can fill in the gaps a bit later. But I think having that real focus is great, because I can't write songs on a daily basis. I can't write songs every day. So I kind of need to say, okay, I need a new album now. So I mean, that was Happy Songs, and that was Everybody is Flawed. Oh, that was also Songs About Love. Yeah, of course it was. That was also written in a month in a similar way. Old Songs for Kids was different, because I had a bundle of songs I'd written years ago, which I kind of pulled together and kind of reworked a little bit. And then I had a few new songs I added to the mix. That kind of created that album. There's a new album underway. Of course there is, because
there's always one in the top. Yeah.
yeah, there's one in the pipeline. That was written essentially because I mean, Martin, who's my kind of keyboardist and bassist, and quite often lead guitarist, and then Pete, my drummer and percussionist. Pete lives a couple of 100 miles away, and so he doesn't, we don't get together very often. And Martin's a very busy guy. He's got other jobs, other bands, in fact. So it's like I said, look, why don't we get together for a weekend? We'll spend 2 days. We'll just record whatever I've got. And at that time, I said, look, if we just re-record some of my old songs, maybe some of my Hiawatha Telephone Company songs, that'll be okay. But about a month before we were going to get together, I thought, actually, I've got some ideas for some pretty cool songs. So, right, head down, let's write them. And I ended up writing 7 songs, which we banged out in that weekend, pretty much. I mean, and then I've been adding to them and changing them a bit since then. So yeah, as a process, I think you've got to kind of lock yourself away, really, as an artist. I think that's quite important.
Yeah. So how much of that process do you feel is intrinsic, like the songs coming out of you, and how much of it is extrinsic, which means something outside force, story, situation is informing the song, and it's just kind of like taking you by the hand and like just dragging your hand across the page, metaphor?
I think the muse or whatever it is kind of grabs hold of you some way. And I think a lot of it is inside, but how it expresses itself, that's it's a very difficult question, isn't it? I mean, I don't feel there's I don't feel like I am the vehicle for somebody else's vision or some other being's thing. So it definitely comes from me. But I then think you need to kind of force the muse's hand a little bit. As I said, lock yourself away and just kind of pick up your guitar and say, okay, I'm going to play a few chords. And when the chords sound right and the words sound right, they'll come together, and then I'll build it from that.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of construction job going on as well, which I guess is more traditional songwriting.
I saw a really interesting Pharrell interview, and he said creativity comes from the universe, and the universe is like a library, and all you're doing is checking out ideas, and the idea you check out on Tuesday isn't the same idea you check out on Wednesday, and all you're doing is borrowing the idea and then putting it back into the universe. I thought that was really cool.
I think that's quite a cool way of seeing it. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've done that. I've sat there obsessing over a song for 6 hours, got nothing. I've sat there, put my pen on the paper, and looked up in 15 minutes, and I was like, I don't even know where the song came from. It just happened. Some of your best.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to wait for that moment. Absolutely.
I think that you spoke to a very cool moment when the creativity happens and you just have to sit in it. Like so many songs I've lost just because, okay, the session's over at 5. I got inspired at 4:30 and I'm like, well, I have dinner plans. So now I have to go to the thing. But it's like sometimes the creativity just shows up and you got to sit in it. Like you almost have to like cancel all my meetings. We have an album to finish,
Yeah. I'm very envious of people that can keep dream notebooks and things like that. They say, oh, I had this idea in the middle of the night and I wrote it down and wow, there it is. There's a song. It's like, that's never happened to me. Oh. That just goes. Yeah. I'm definitely an artist who has to lock himself in the studio, really.
Like you always hear that, that old Stone story. And I don't know if it's true, but Keith Richards fell asleep. He heard the chord to Satisfaction. Then he woke up, and then he woke up the next morning. He's like, I heard this chord in my dreams, and it became Satisfaction. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not, but
I don't know if it is either.
Yeah,
I remember the story about the Stones where Mick and Keith were, I think, locked in a room by their manager at the time. He said, "Look, I don't want you to record any more covers. Those old R&B covers, they did a Beatles cover or whatever." He said, "Look, you should be writing your own songs like the Beatles do. So I'm going to lock you away and you got to come out with something." I can't remember what they came out with, the first song that they wrote, but it was like one of their first singles they wrote themselves. It's great. Of course, it was great.
Of course, it's great. Yeah. must be nice, right? So, well, speaking of old music, how about any new music? Is there anybody doing anything now that like really impresses you?
I love lots of new music. I mean, I follow quite a lot of the independent scene. I say the independent scene is enormous, but I believe in supporting independent artists, and I always have done. So it's kind of like I'm really keen to hear albums by various people you pick up on social media or whatever. My friends are in a band called Patience, from Brighton. They've got an album out called Post High Lows, which I just adore. That's I think really, and they're really exciting to see live. So bands like that are really cool. Okay, slightly bigger bands. I bought some records recently. I got the Kevin Morby album. That was cool. His Golden Messenger. I don't know if you know him. And Aldous Harding, someone I really rate and have done. I've seen her I think about 8 times over the last, I don't know, decade, I guess. And I've got a ticket to go and see her tonight in Brighton, so I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. That's a good time. All right. So we always start as artists, right? We start out with this blind optimism, and it's a little bit different when you're younger, starting out. You're 16, you pick up a guitar, and you're like, "Our band's gonna change the world," and then your expectations kind of get like whittled down by reality. But we still have things that we've dreamed of, and sometimes some of that stuff happens. What is something that you kind of hoped would come to pass since you started doing music that has actually happened? Like it's something that you've always dreamed of, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I got to do that."
I mean, I was a slow starter. For me, I was never like, I mean, when I tried to first pick up a guitar, I was terrible at it, and I gave up for years because I thought I couldn't play it. I didn't know how. And I mean, it's weird. I'd found this guitar. It's not. No, it's not here. So I'm looking around. I'll show you, but you can see if you go to my Elastic Stage site, which is where my vinyl and CDs live. There's a picture of this kind of decoupage guitar. This is a guitar I found at a dustbin on the Hackney Road in London. Somebody got really annoyed for whatever reason, just smashed this guitar against the wall and just put it in a public bin on the street. And I thought, actually, it looks pretty cool. So I took it home and I decoupaged it. It was an art project. And that's kind of what it was. It had no back. It had, I think, 4 strings left, or 3 or 4 strings. And so it was just literally it was a thing. It was a little sculpture.
Yeah.
And then many years later, I was kind of looking at this thing in my office and thinking, okay, let's just pick it up and see what it sounds like. And I started plucking away at chords. And, I mean, you play guitar, right? So, you can play just a small number of strings. You can make some interesting sounds.
Right.
And that's, and so I kind of started picking out the guitar and thinking, oh, okay, maybe I can do something with this. And then I started kind of, learning chords and designing, doing covers, and then thinking, okay, I can actually create something here that's a bit different. And it became this very slow process. That's literally just sitting on my sofa, playing with this broken guitar. And then, of course, I got a proper guitar and started doing it properly. And it just built from that, really.
Did you get any kind of like YouTube tutorial, or was it just like your chords and your patience?
I mean, me and my chords and my patience, looking at chord shapes. I still can't do barre chords. I've got really stubby fingers. That's just, that's never going to happen. So I cheat. I do the simple G. I play very simply. That's my style, and that's okay. But it was starting out with covers, and then you kind of get a feel for how other people write their songs. Lou Reed was someone, Tim Harding very early on, Beatles songs. And then you start thinking, well, hold on, actually, I've got some ideas. What if I do this chord? What if I do that chord? And you kind of then start building your own patterns, and it kind of grows from there, really. I very much liken myself, though. I think part of the reason why I called the first Hiawatha Telephone album Harry Smith Was My Father. It's kind of dedicated to those Harry Smith albums. Do you know the Harry Smith anthologies? This guy, he was a guy in the 1950s who influenced Dylan and quite a lot of the folk scene, really, because he basically put together these compilations of 1920s and 1930s blues and folk singers from old 78s, essentially. And it's a beautiful box set of, I think 3 albums. And anyway, these people were people who just sat around at home with a guitar. If they were lucky, there might be a piano or something, and just, taught themselves to play, essentially. And, that's how some of the early blues songs were written. And, you can tell that from listening to them, really. And I kind of liken what I did a bit to that. They were sitting on their front porch with a bottle of whiskey, maybe, guitar in hand, rocking away. And I was sitting on my sofa, with a bottle of beer, basically doing the same thing.
Yeah.
80 years later, or whatever it was,
Yeah, that's cool, man. So what do you think is more important, right? Because as somebody who, like for me, like for instance, right, I'll give you an example. My brother is naturally gifted. I mean, since he was maybe 9, I'd be like, hey, man, you ever hear that song that goes such and such? And he sits down at a piano and just plays it. I'm like, of course he can. Somebody on now me, I'm not naturally gifted. So anything I had to do was hours in the studio, get the song completely right, bring in an engineer. Meanwhile, my brother can literally like walk on stage with a guitar strapped to his back, get paid for a gig and leave. I'm like, of course you can. What do you think is more important, natural talent or work ethic?
This is completely a self-justification, but I am not, and I don't have a natural musical talent. I'm very much an amateur, and I always will be. I don't think my voice is particularly great. It's got a bit of character sometimes, but it is what it is. I think I'm a good songwriter. I'm a good lyricist, but I think sometimes I like the fact that I am a little bit amateurish about things and a bit sloppy at it. We have this rule in the studio where we tend to kind of go at things, well, we did initially at least, just 3 times. If it wasn't working after 3 goes, you just think, well, let's just stop that and go on to something else. And I think sometimes doing things that really rough way, it's very much just the way it is, the way you are, means you're not going to end up sounding like someone else. You sound a bit more authentically like you. If I was a better guitarist and a better singer, I'd probably just start sounding much more like other good guitarists and other great singers. And it wouldn't be so authentically me. So in some ways, I'm quite pleased that I'm just not as good as your brother in an odd way.
Well, that's where you and I differ. I wish I was as good as my brother. Yeah. If you talk to people that are making it, or if you even see these interviews, everybody's saying be brutally yourself, be so authentic. And then there's also a commercial viability to it where it's like, well, if myself isn't selling records, I should probably sound a little bit more like A, B, or C, So where do you draw the distinction between sounding specifically like yourself and then still trying to pay the mortgage with music, because
well, I'm not paying off my mortgage with my music, unfortunately. It's not that big an earner, so I'm not sure I'm not the right person to advise people. If you want to succeed in the industry, I mean, you know how it works. I mean, yes, be really talented, focus on your art, be really good at what you do. Most of the advice is don't be too weird, don't be too different, be consistent in your style, your musical style. I can't be consistent, and I don't want to be consistent. I like playing around. I like experimenting with new things. So you get that. You listen to my album, in particular the last album, Old Songs for Kids. It starts off with kind of some indie pop, and then there's a kind of big rock song, and then there's a kind of this Latin dance number, which was great fun to do. And we didn't intend it to be a Latin dance number, but it was just a moment in the studio that just worked, and so we just built on that.
You have songs on that album that are commercially viable. Like I listened to AC/DC since you booked the meeting. I listened to AC/DC 3 or 4 times. I played Big Man multiple times. Like I went back, I was like, I have to hear that again. So, I mean, if you get the earworm, that means the song worked from a commercial standpoint, So you had songs on that work. I think I had an artist tell me, and I was like, he was a hip hop guy, but he makes such relevant music. And now he's on the other side of 30, still making really relevant music. And let's face it, it's a young man's game. But he's still, I mean, we're talking millions of streams. He's doing really well. And he was like, and I was like, how are you staying so relevant and making these pop songs? And he's like, no. I'm continuing to make experimental music. It just happens to be accessible. It's all experimental until it breaks through. And I'm like, okay. So it's almost like permission to be weird. And your tribe will just find you,
I think so. I think that's just a great way to be. I like the idea that my tribe will find me at some stage, and it's that permission to be weird thing is great. I mean, Daylight was the classic example. That's the kind of Latin dance number from Old Songs for Kids. And there's, if you go to the Elastic Stage site, there's there is a version, the original demo, which was like a 2-minute folk song that I'd written, me, my guitar. That was all it was. And brought that to the studio. We started laying that down. And then I was listening there with my engineer, Paul, and we were kind of thinking, we're just chatting away and saying, that would sound really good with a bit of a Latin, little Latin riff. And Martin, my keyboardist, said, basically, it was a real hold my beer moment. He just said, right, hold on a second, I might have something. Sat down at the piano and just started on this little riff. And it was only like 2-minute song. And we took that away. And then I came back to the studio and I said to Paul, I love that riff Martin laid down. I really love it. Let's just double the song. Let's just kind of do a copy and we'll have that running through. And then we'll just put some other layers on top of that and just make it something really different. And that's what we did in the end. And I really love it. I think it works.
Isn't that cool when that happens like that? Yeah, you can kind of like let go. Some people get a little bit too possessive with the music. Almost, what's the saying? Sometimes you have to kill your babies. You know, like you have it the way it is in your you have it the way it is in your mind, and it's so precious, and you don't want to try anything or do anything, and you know. But
Yeah,
that's cool.
Martin's
Yeah,
great
that's
to
cool.
Yeah, Martin's great to work with because whenever he comes into the studio, it's like odd days at a time. But he comes in, and it's like a little playroom for him because he does keyboards and he does things with strings. So, oh, great, there's a guitar I've not used before. I'll try that. Or, I love that particular bass. Or there's an organ over there. Oh, I haven't done organ for a while. And, the new songs we're doing, he found this kind of weird little synthesizer at the back of the studio and thought, well, let's give that a try and play with that. And it's worked out really well. So we're using some of that as well. So, yeah. I think that freedom, just give people a bit of freedom. If you've got the right people with the right spirit in the room, they just come up with magic sometimes.
Yeah, and that's good that you can have that kind of collaboration too, and it's good having people you can work with too. There's something to be said about like the musical community, so to speak. Like you hear these guys that try to. I have guests that come on and they just kind of make music in a vacuum. It's just like them, a computer, and a keyboard, like in a bedroom, and then you hear these stories about exhaustion and burnout and everything. So having people to support you, it's not so much what you make, but how you make it. When you think about like the environment and the people you want to be working with, because at the end of the day, it's a marathon, not a sprint, So you're making music with people you want to be friends with for the next 10, 20 years.
I've never been in a band, and people quite often ask, why have you never been in a band? I mean, it's partly just a time thing. I've, never been to organize it. But it's also that there is that thing that I know a lot of bands have been together and then really broken up badly. And it just creates a management role that you don't expect to have as a musician, but you actually need to make a band work, and that's a kind of different sort of mentality.
Yeah, great artist, bad administrator. It's like
yeah. I mean, dream is you have a band like probably the Beatles started out as, or a band like I think of REM, for example, as a bunch of friends that just grew up together and developed together.
Well, those are the ones that work. I mean, Dave Grohl has this great quote, and he was like, people go to these talent shows and they learn these like very structured way of making bands together where they put four strangers together into like the pop machine and they become a band. And he's like, no, that's not how you do it. That you have people that you would die for. You go to a yard sale and get shitty instruments. You play them loud, play them often, and you become the biggest band in the world. That's how you make a band. And I'm like, I had like tears in my eyes as I'm reading it. I get like the chills. Yeah.
You need to do the work in building friendship as well as just, playing songs. Yeah.
Well, something about your composition, which is neat, is you really let your vocals breathe by themselves a lot. Like when, like you can tell it's like for instance, you don't do a ton of doubling, not a whole bunch of like elaborate harmonies. Like the vocal it just kind of sits in front of the mix and all that personality breathes through. But also because it's a sparser composition, the arrangements of the music are kind of like they kind of dance back and forth with each other, between your vocal and the way you have the instruments. It's not like when you hear a Whitney Houston song, you just hear Whitney booming over a fairly generic arrangement, There, when you hear like hip hop, you hear the guy rapping and then there's, just a beat. The arrangement supports a very interesting vocal, but the vocal is sparse, if that makes sense. You let your voice just be what your voice is, which separates it, which makes it sound different than everything else that's out there.
Thank you for that. It's a really interesting observation. I'm not a big fan of my own voice. I find it quite difficult to listen back to a lot of the time, and yet, actually, when I listen to some of the old songs I've laid down, and then listen to again after a year or two's gap, then I start thinking, well, actually, that's okay. That's not quite how I felt about it when they originally recorded it, and it is sparse. And I do some double tracking, and my friend Tim kind of lays back some backing vocals on the last couple of albums, which is really cool. It's a really nice addition, I think. Gives it a warmer feel. It's probably a little bit more commercial, not that really I'm doing commercial work. But yeah, the vocal, I do think the vocal is partly because I'm a lyricist fundamentally. And so for me, the words have to stand out. They have to be clear. So it's quite important for the vocal to kind of stand out and sit on top of the song a bit as well.
You do a lot of things well, and you do have like a really interesting process. What is the biggest challenge for you in terms of trying to get a project out the door?
Time, a lot of the time. I mean, a lot of the albums I make, even though, as you observed, I'm quite productive. There's a lot of albums that have come out over the last few years, and they've had a lot of work put into them. It's whenever we can grab a moment. We book, a day a month pretty much. There may be a couple of days to kind of lay down the kind of core of the album, and then maybe a few other days where there's a few more songs to lay down, and then it's kind of one day a month over the course of the next year, really, just kind of putting the things together, mixing things properly, maybe adding a trumpet here, a bit of backing vocals there, and so on. So it's just working things through. And I think the time thing is the biggest challenge for me. I'd love to be able to do it full time, and I don't. So I'm envious of. I don't know if you saw, I was talking to somebody about that Rolling Stones, the Jean-Luc Godard film about the Rolling Stones doing when they build up Sympathy for the Devil. It's called 1+1, very famous sort of late 60s film. And he just, an amazing chance opportunity, Jean-Luc Godard in the studio with the Rolling Stones as they are building up this song, Sympathy for the Devil, which is obviously one of their, really great songs. And it starts out in a bit like some of my songs, it's a simple kind of, Mick Jagger's got this idea for a lyric, lays it down with a bit of simple guitar, and then they start building it up, and they kind of get a bit of drumming in, a bit of tom-toms. The backing vocal scene is just beautiful to see. I'm deeply envious of bands like that, the Beatles as well, obviously with the Let It Be stuff. You could just spend day after day in the studio just playing, coming up with things. But even they, I say I'm envious of that. I am envious of that. But the best moments are those moments of inspiration. It's when the muse hits. It's like when Paul McCartney comes into the studio and he's just been at home playing around on the keyboards, and the song he brings in is like Let It Be or something. It's just like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? I don't know.
Yeah. How about that? Like I was reading, there's a McCartney biography. It was written from. It's a lot of it is it's a transcript. So the guy was like on scene. I forget the writer's name. It's called Many Years From Now. And it's a lot of like Paul talking about like when he recorded and what he recorded. So he's like, so you see him talking about, he's like, John wrote the chorus and I did the 2 verses here. And then we recorded this. And there was like a run of like maybe 6 or 7 days when like 8 of the 10 best songs of all time they did in the span of like a week. I'm like, how do you go to a studio and do like Obla D, then go do Blackbird, then go like everything? All these songs are getting recorded like day after day. And you're just like,
it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. When you think about some of the really great artists, the work they're really famous for, the work they've really brought in the beans, it's a very small part of their life, a very small part of what they do. I mean, Dolly Parton's the classic one. She wrote, Jolene and I Will Always Love You. Literally, I think it was on the same day. Literally within, same 8 hours. How'd you do that? That's just incredible.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And you think about, you've had days where you've wrote multiple songs in a day. So let's just say in retrospect, let's say you did have a song that broke through and then these songs are part of your catalog. There'll be somebody on an interview like this being like, I can't believe John wrote these 2 songs in one day.
Yeah, right? Yeah, maybe. I don't think I've had my 2 absolute classics in a day yet, but maybe that's the goal.
There you go. Taking ourself out of the equation, right? We all know that artist maybe in our neighborhood or somebody we've collaborated with, that incredible musician. Somebody we so admire and we know them personally, and for whatever reason, they just cannot get out of the park. What do you think is the biggest obstacle holding back artists that we believe are talented, but just can't get out of either that local following, or just they just don't perform or just can't get moving?
It's really, that's a really hard one. I definitely have friends like that. I mean, every other person you bump into in Brighton, my hometown, seems to be a musician or some kind of artist or something. Yeah, and there's lots of people who are really, really talented. Mm-hmm. Some have had brief moments and then never really made it. Others have never made it at all. And I think some of it's, you got to put the work in. I mean, not everybody succeeds, but if you're not out there trying, you ain't going to go off starting blocks, really. So, and that means when I put the work in, it's not just creating music, it's doing the whole job, the promotion, writing to people, finding people like yourself, like blogs, like websites who are going to help you promote your music, get the word out there. It's so important, making connections. And that's, a lot of people think, I'm a musician, that's all I do. I don't really know how to do this other stuff.
Right.
You got to be out there doing it. It's part of the job.
I had somebody explain it to me, and it made a lot of sense, because the minute you decide to subsidize your life with music, to subsidize your expenses with music, it is now a music business, which means you have to be able to do 4 things: make a thing, tell people about the thing, sell the thing, deliver the thing. And they said, even with music, you have to be able to do all 4 of those good to great. You don't have to be exceptional, but you have to be good to great at all 4, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that
I
made
think that
so much
makes sense.
sense to me. Yeah, because we're musicians. We're like, yo, I'm a guitar virtuoso, but I can't even make a web page. Or hey, I'm really great I make these awesome videos, but it's also nobody can buy my stuff because my website's too complicated to buy an album, so I can't deliver it. You know, and you hear people like, my music's so good, why isn't it enough? It's because it's one of those other pillars. The good music is only about 20% of the music business.
It makes you think. I mean, I'm sure that, well, I know some of my friends who haven't made it. I know they've got a bundle of fantastic songs out there, and I kind of want to steal it away and kind of softly release the demos that I've got of some of their
Yeah.
stuff, because I think
Yeah.
it's that good. They need a bit of help, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
A lot of times it's volume. Like I know people that'll go out and do a 6-song set, and I'm like, dude, like you're too big for this place. And then you look at them, you're like, oh, I've been doing music for 15 years and I have these 6 songs. And it's like, oh, that's why. So there's 2 quotes, and you tell me which one do you think is more accurate. One is from Ashley Stahl. It says, indecision is death. You can always start, but course correct along the way. You can't just stay stagnant. And then the other one is from Alex Hormozy. He says, distraction kills more dreams than difficulty. Just people not being able to focus. Which one of those obstacles do you think is more prevalent with artists?
I'm probably of the first. I just think you got to go for it and just keep going, and then correct as you go. Take opportunity. It's not about. One of my favorite quotes is by Samuel Beckett. It's kind of, start, fail every time, but next time fail better. And that for me just has real resonance. It's like, just try. Don't worry about the failure, because you're going to try again. Next time, fail better. Yeah. And but I think a lot of the good things that I've done, it's just been opportunistic. And some of the opportunities, they're opportunities I've created. Like the very first time I recorded, it was just thinking, well, I've got some songs, I should do something with them. What am I going to do? I don't know. I'll find someone who can record them. Great. Pay them a little bit of money, and we'll just take the opportunity. Other things just come along the way, and you just think, well, let's give it a try. One of the interesting things I'm doing at the moment is I'm working with a Nigerian producer who's originally got in touch because he liked the music, liked my songs, and said, well, why don't you help me produce some, I'll help you produce something. And it's kind of like, it feels like the worst idea in the world when a Nigerian contacts you and asks you for money. But actually, I've seen him, we chatted, and I trusted him, and actually that's proven really good, because he's a good friend now, and he's got a very good style. He kind of makes sure you're getting something. It's not like an open book or anything. Anyway, he started out with the idea that he'd produce me and my vocals on his music, and we tried a couple of tracks, and there's one track that's out there that's like that. And it was okay, but I kind of thought that wasn't going to work. And then he thought, actually, you know what I should do? I should form a band to cover your songs. I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. And let's work together on the production and, do something. So there's a Nigerian band out there now basically doing cover versions of Family Grave songs. There's an EP with 5 of them out there already, and they're recording another 5, and there'll basically be an album of, covers. And I just think, okay, that's cool. I never expected that to happen. But if I didn't put a little bit of trust in the world and just kind of engage and think, okay, let's just experiment, you take chances, and, you take the sorts of chances. You're not scared to write them off if you have to. That's okay, because I could have just pulled the plug on the whole project if it wasn't working, and that would have been okay. Or you can just let it go and see what emerges.
Now, do you think you would be as productive or successful if you started earlier? And the reason I ask is because I got into music. I kind of had like a music renaissance of sorts. So I started when I was about 28 or 29. So I had this mindset that it was like, I don't really have time to be scared. So I would just go on stage and do wild stuff, see if people responded. It was kind of like a hip hop rock project, so it was a lot of question response. So I just went on stage and saw what worked. Like, I just don't have time to be scared. Do you think you would be as productive if you would have started younger with such a huge breadth of work, the distractions of being younger or whatever? And I don't know much about your personal life, but I know that 21-year-old me would have a hard time getting songs finished, but 29-year-old me was able to kind of like plug through and finish albums.
I mean, same with me. Absolutely. I'm definitely more focused as I was older, and, and there were less distractions, and you kind of, I don't know about you. I don't know your life either, but I mean, maybe you have a bit more stability in your life, a bit more security. You're not having to look for a home necessarily. Maybe you've got a good partner who's supportive and, all this kind of stuff. But I'm a late starter. So yeah, I have no regrets about starting late. I don't think it makes me feel, I mean, I do feel, time is short, life is short, and that's for sure. That's a definite truth. But I don't think that's where the pressure comes from. I think it's just that kind of willingness to kind of just see where the spirit takes you, where the muse takes you, and just kind of see what emerges and just keep being productive.
Yeah.
I suppose I did it in a different way when I was younger, but it never emerged as songs and music.
I feel like the social validation wasn't as important when I was older. Like when I was 20, I didn't really know who I was yet. So to go on stage, present art, I don't think my insecurities would have let me deliver music with the same enthusiasm and confidence as I did when I was like 30, where I was like, look, this is just kind of who I am now. Take it or leave it, Interesting to think about it. Now, that being said, if you could give your younger self a message, you can go back in time a quarter century to that young guy and give him a message. What would that message be?
Well, I think just let it go. See what, take the opportunities, really. See what's out there. Don't say no, just engage. I mean, do you know the story about how John Lennon met Yoko Ono?
No.
Yoko Ono was putting on an exhibition in London in like the mid 1960s, and John went to see it. And there was this little bit of the exhibition was a stepladder to a word in the ceiling, and the word on the ceiling was yes. And you had to climb the stepladder to be able to read it because it was that small. And John Lennon always said that if the word had been no, he probably wouldn't ever have been interested in meeting Yoko Ono.
I didn't know.
But it was like yes, that just triggered something in him that he thought, actually, this person's interesting, and I want to know more. And I think yes. Cool. That's I love that story.
Obviously, like I said, we do have some challenges. Like, what does a bad day look like for you? Like on a day you just don't have it, because everybody has their own version of a bad day. Like, what does yours look like?
I think a bad day is when I let the world go on top of me. There's too much intrusion from, other stuff, other people's problems. Really, I think somehow you have to learn to kind of grow. As I get older, I've grown a thicker skin, and that's really healthy. You have to kind of let things kind of just wash over you a bit, really, and let them pass. And I think when you do that, you kind of go with the flow much more. Then things start emerging. You start finding time and space to do creative things. I find the worst things when there's other people's distractions. We have this problem at the moment in my house. It's just full of stuff for various reasons. My mother died a year ago, and I've got a lot of her stuff in the house, which is, she was old, it's fine. I mean, it's sad, but it was not unexpected. But it's just like lots of her stuff is now in our house. It's like, what do we do with it? I'm not distant enough to get rid of it. I kind of feel close to it, and I don't want to do that. And there's lots of other things that are kind of crowding my space, and it's physical space, but it's also crowding my mental space. And we need to kind of free ourselves from some of that a bit, and then as we create physical space, it actually will also create more mental space to kind of do more new things. I think that's why some people also, that's quite healthy to kind of buy that space. I mean, people do art degrees. I find all the people I know have done art degrees, not because they learn anything from their lecturers. I mean, nothing at all a lot of the time. But what they do get is time and space to do art, and resources to do art, and other people to do art with sometimes. And it's just, that's the best reason to do an art degree, is just to kind of use that space to kind of develop yourself, really.
Actually, as you're saying it, I feel like I'm like looking in a mirror, because like I went into this show because it was like I wanted to be close to music and to do something. I wanted to be excused to hang with musicians, but also can't afford to be in a bar 5-6 nights a week. So I'm like, so what do I do? And like working with an engineer and having somebody like produce like this show, it literally is just a space that forces me to be creative, once, twice a week. You know what I mean? Sit here, think of questions, immerse myself in somebody else's music to a point where I have to like actually invest in it so I can talk about it and sound informed and not like an idiot, like I've actually listened to the music, and can have intelligent conversations, and then be here. And that's what it is. It's almost like I've forced myself to create a space to be creative. And because I'm paying, I actually have to show up,
Yeah, exactly. Which is a good thing
Yeah,
as
that
well.
makes so much.
Yeah.
I never looked at. You just made me look. You just made me like reframe like my purpose for doing the show. Really interesting. Yeah. So when you do have those days when you feel like the world's just kind of piling on you, what are some of the useful things that you tell yourself in those like quiet moments to kind of bring yourself back out and recenter yourself?
As I say, I've developed a pretty thick skin these days, so I don't let things get on top of me. And I think that's kind of come from experience. I've had really black days when I was younger, and I've been in counselling. I've kind of, had moments where I just not want to do that. I mean, you know, uh, there have been times, but I think because you've been through this period, and one of the lessons I've learned is, I'm a very up and down person. There are some people who they just kind of at a constant level all the time, and it's very their graph of experience and emotion is quite flat. Mine's not. Mine's pretty up and down, and
Yeah,
and that's
I'm
just
with
the
you
way
with
I
that.
am. But recognizing that in yourself and recognizing that when you're in a down part of the curve, it's going to bounce back up again. That's kind of important. And then thinking about, okay, so what are the things that are going to get me there? If you're in a bad place, separate yourself from whatever it is that feels bad. Go for a long walk, maybe listen to some good music, maybe go and see some friends, maybe just, maybe have a few beers if that's what kind of frees you up. But that's okay. Don't kick yourself, don't blame yourself. It's that separation. It's a bit like if you want to create art, find a space to create it in. Give yourself space to do that. And I think mentally it's the same thing. It's like separate yourself, give yourself a bit of defense. We need our little moat around the castle. I think that's kind of I like that kind of image,
I like
really.
that analogy. Yeah.
Build your moat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Boundaries, like safe boundaries, be kind of a little bit more selective of who you let in.
Somebody told me recently that, if people don't like you, that's okay, because that's a great filter. Those are people you don't need to worry about anymore, It's like you can live without them. And it's like sometimes telling yourself that kind of thing
They
is
made the
really
decision for
helpful.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could choose one skill to refine, to get better at, let's say you're going to bury yourself in this one project for like 6 months. And you're like, I'm going to get better at this.
I should probably say I should be a better guitarist, but I don't think that's going to happen with my little stubby fingers. So I think vocals, I think my vocals have changed and improved actually over the years. And you can kind of hear that in some of the albums. And I think I'd like to spend more time working out what my voice ought to sound like. I have this idea that I can kind of do a different, work with other musicians and kind of do other kind of work like that. But what I can't do is find someone else to vocalize myself, really. So yeah, that's probably the thing.
If we were to have this conversation, say a year from now, right? What would you have liked to have completed in that window of time that you would feel like, yeah, I did it?
There'll be a new album, and I hope it's going to be really great. I think it's going to be great. I'm really pleased with the songs, so I think it's coming along really well. I'd like a lot of people to hear it. I think we're talking about the jobs of a musician not being just music. So I think that sales thing or that kind of promotional task to do that better would be really helpful because, I want to find my tribe and I know they're out there somewhere and they definitely haven't all found me yet. So
a helpful reframe for me is somebody said, and I don't know how accurate it is, but it was helpful. Is like they say, all right, they use one of my albums as an example, and they say, like, what kind of effort and creativity did you put into this album? And I was like, oh yeah, well, I was listening to a lot of this at the time, and I wanted the bass to sound like this, and the vocals to sound this, and this is the mood. And I gave this long, elaborate answer. And they say, cool. When the album was done, what sort of creativity did you put in the promotion? And I was like, oh, I sent out flyers and invited people to the record release party. Is there a part of us? Will there ever be a part of us as artists where we can put that same creativity into the promotion? I'm not talking about the analytics. I'm talking about like color, visual aesthetic.
Like, I wonder. I mean, probably not, because that's not what we do. That's why we should, if we had enough money, employ managers and and other people who are specialists, because everyone has a different specialism. But of course, we're small independent artists, and we can't do that. So we have to just do what we can whenever we can.
They were speaking about it more from like a creative standpoint, like the actual creativity aspect of your promotion, not just volume, not just post clicks, things of that nature. But it's like Like I saw like there's this artist, like for instance, her name is Lena Cooper, and her thing is yellow. Everything she wears is just yellow. It's like her color. But her album, her 2025 album, is called Some Girl That Never Made It on the Internet, or something like that. It's like this long title. It was cool though. And I was like, this album it sounds like 2025. It's incredible. But her promotion is almost like this pandering. It's almost like a spoof on how people promote stuff, if that makes sense. So like the people that do to just like hawk views and stuff, it's like her in yellow trying to do it, you know? But it's it's almost, but it's parody of it, you know? And I'm like, it's so creative and interesting. I'm like, the promotion is as good as the album. You know
Have fun with it, absolutely.
It looks like she's having a ball, you know?
Yeah.
It's like her in front of a Taco Bell eating, and lettuce is poured all over her, and she's just like, here, like my song. Make sure you like my song. It's like this sloppy, you know, like, but it works. It's great. And I'm like, huh. I was like, you really can, if you can not take yourself so seriously, which is kind of what you're talking about, having the thick skin and just being like, I have nothing to lose, just put it all out there. There's a creative funness to the promotion. It doesn't have to feel like work. I haven't found it.
Have fun with it. There's I have no idea what works. I think if you were in the industry, you'd spend loads of money. That's not what we do. So what else are you going to do? But play around, have fun. You know, you can do a really serious promotion, one album. That'll be okay. You know, I tried to do that. I've tried to write good PR, or kind of like put it out, try to find loads of email addresses, send it to, and try and find the right people. Sometimes you can just do something fun and different, and great, go for it.
Well, I know that what's coming back now is you're starting to see is like the album rollout is like a thing now. Like it was before. It was you'd have I mean, and this is, I'm probably painting with some broad strokes here, but I mean, you would have like your big music video, you do a couple of interviews, and then the album comes out, you know, and you get a nice push for about 5 to 7 days. But now people are doing like an album rollout. And I'm starting to see some like really interesting things. And I'm like, oh, this looks kind of fun. Like for instance, do you know the artist Halsey?
Oh yeah.
Pop singer Halsey. Like she did an album called The Great Impersonator. So she did a photo shoot of her dressed up as like the different female artists. And I'm like, that's actually interesting. But it was like maybe like 15 or 20 different artists. So Instagram had a different picture of her dressed as Dolly Parton, her dressed as Britney Spears, her dressed as, you know. And then by the time the album came out, I was like, this is I had just as much fun looking at the pictures as I did listening to the album, you know.
At least you remember her name and you kind of know what she's doing, what she's about, which is part of the art, really. Yeah.
So it kind of gets you thinking too. It's like you think about your album, but then you think about your rollout, and it's like, wow, if the rollout had as much emphasis as the album, it actually might be a cool symbiotic relationship between my promotion and the art.
Yeah, there's no rules to any of this. I mean, you know, some people say the album's dead, so you've got to release loads of singles because that's all people listen to. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that worked for some people, but I think the album's going to come back and it will change. And I think what people want more than anything is something that feels a bit new, a bit fresh, a bit different.
Right.
And I don't know what that's going to be. You know, it could just be anything. All I know is if you just try and follow the industry rules and do what other people tell you should do, you're probably not going to get far. So that thing about being yourself or just having fun and seeing what emerges, I think is kind of important, really.
I agree with that too. I think if you try to rework what's already worked, it's too late. It's almost like if an investment looks like a good investment, you're too late.
Yeah.
Like if you're already doing what's already worked, it almost looks like if you either look like you're crazy until people think you're ahead of your time. You know, he looks completely nuts, and then it works, and you're like, he was ahead of his time. You got it. Yeah, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking of promotion, how can we support you, man? You're doing really cool and interesting stuff. I want people to know about it. How can we best support you?
I'm out there on the only site I'm not on is Facebook, actually, because Meta hates me basically, and they ban me. I think because the last album cover for Old Songs for Kids, which has got a picture of my son when he was like 2 years old on a beach somewhere.
Yeah. That's solid.
I think it's great. Yeah. It's a great photo. Really powerful.
The crooked sunglasses. I love it.
Exactly. That's the one. Yeah. And it looks really cool. And, you know, it's not like people haven't used kids on covers before. I mean, Nevermind, you know, by Nirvana, like that's an example.
Yeah, Biggie Smalls, Babies.
It's great. Anyway, Meta hate me. And I think the the automatons, the AI kind of decided to ban me. So I'm not on Facebook at all, but everywhere else I'm on. And I love Instagram. That's a lot of fun. I like Threads. That's kind of chatty. It's quite good for independent musicians. I think you kind of meet a different sort of community that way. And I've really enjoyed that. I'm on Bandcamp. Of course, I'm on Bandcamp. So if people want to download my stuff, I'm a big fan of once a month, usually Bandcamp Friday, I'll be buying independent musicians' music because I just think it's like paying my music tax as a music fan. I think it's important that we do that, And then I've got records and CDs available on elasticStage.com. And again, you can go to my Linktree, normal Linktree /Family Grave, and you will find me. I'm always there under the Family Grave, and there's a link to the albums. They look really cool, especially the latest one, Old Songs for Kids. It's got that great picture on the cover. I always do a really cool inner sleeve with all the lyrics and so on, so that looks really smart. And Elastic Stage is a very interesting company. I don't know if you've heard of them. They enable you to do very small runs of vinyl. I never expected to have a vinyl release. And I do now. And it sounds really good. The way they master their stuff is just fantastic, I think.
I love that too. I can give my own shameless plug. The old songs for kids. First off, I love the title. I like kind of ironic titles to albums like that. I actually have my album's called Songs About Girls. It's like my 4th album. So it was kind of neat. I kind of felt like a kinship to you, but Old Songs for Kids, incredible album, deeply emotional, still elements of fun. AC/DC is probably like I call that the banger single on the album. That was the song that really connected with me. Big Man is a really good song too. If you can spare 10 minutes just to check out some music, I personally would point you to those 2 songs. I personally vouch for AC/DC, Big Man, on the album Old Songs for Kids from Jon from the Family Grave.
Thank you very much,
Jon, thank you so much for spending time with us, man. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun. Good talk.
Awesome. I certainly enjoyed it. And the rest of you, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out Loves Music, new episodes every Thursday morning. And if you enjoy what you heard here today, please tell somebody who loves music.